the best way to handle it is the same way that organizations handle any kind of change going on, either within the organization itself or external forces. And that is, you want to keep your team focused on the work at hand and not let the disruption distract from whether it's they're delivering a disservice or they're serving customers on a retail or wholesale basis or medical care, whatever, to help them stay focused even with all of these things going around them. And the best way that you can do this is demonstrating what kind of plan and action that the leadership has, and being very clear about the messaging, and especially sticking to your core messages. Why are we here? Why are we doing all of this? It's very important to give them some sense of stability on a day-to-day basis. And certainly if you are part of an organization that ends up being directly impacted by something that is happening, or a decision that's made at the federal level or rolls down to the state level and potentially affects your funding or whatever, that takes you into a whole different kind of realm. But on a day-to-day basis, in terms of communicating with your internal teams, it's important to reinforce the messages and also to explain why you are taking the position that you are taking. And wherever you end up on the spectrum, if you're going to be very outspoken about the situation, if you're going to make changes, if you're going to change some of the language that you're using, or if you're just going to lay low and hope nobody sees you over here. There needs to be an explanation to your staff and what they know is happening and what they should say to others, because they're going to go home and their neighbors are going to ask and their families are going to ask what's going on and what are you doing, and you want to give them something that they can hold on to do that communication.
Yeah, that's really well put, Lani. And I'll just say, I don't think there's been a time in my lifetime where steady, values-driven leadership is more important. And I think that internal communication is critical for organizations of all sizes, and to really gain and understand everyone kind of being on the same page. What are we doing here? What are our values? And making sure there isn't an information void. And so when people don't understand something, when they don't see the big picture, why are we doing this? They're going to fill in the blanks with information. And that can create distrust. It can create dissension, and so really truly understanding how you want to navigate this situation, what you want your standing to be, to get your team's buy-in, and just and that steady leadership that's driven by values is critically important.
I agree with that, and I think when a lot of times with our clients, when we're talking to them, especially when they're in a crisis situation, the first thought is, what am I going to say, outwardly? How are we going to navigate this? And I think what we all try to do with our clients is not only talk about the external facing message and what we're saying, but that communication, as Ben and Lani has touched on, inwardly to your, to the people who are in your business and who are your employees, because they're going to be your biggest advocates. They're going to want to know what's going on, just as Ben just said. And I think, making sure that, internally, you communicate, what's happening, put together an FAQ. So, they just have that general understanding. So they're not, caught off guard in the banana aisle when the neighbor says, hey, what's going on at, company X? I know you work there. So, it's really important. And I think, again, to touch on what both Lani and Ben have said, is just that core values and how you're going to approach it, whether you're going to be, a leader, an ambassador, or kind of just hunker down in the bunker. And I think that's really critical to understanding, how you're going to approach the situation.
Yeah, and I'll add on to that. I would just say, be prepared. Talk to Lani, get a crisis communications plan, and anticipate what could be coming. What are the scenarios where there could be a problem? Think it through. How are we going to handle this? And as much as peek around corners and not be surprised or caught off guard by a potential problem that might arise that and could elicit some sort of knee-jerk reaction that could actually make things worse, or could be detrimental to the morale or your team, and I think that's critically important. So again, Lani, crisis comms plan.
Yeah, Lonnie's really good at that.
Yeah.
I worked with Lonnie. Lonnie, can you talk a little bit about when we worked on that one account with a client and we had to create a message horizon chart and to kind of see around the corner?
Well, one of the things that's really important when there's so much turmoil, and it's whether it's something that's just affecting your organization or the broad spectrum of what's happening in our country right now, it's easy to get really focused on what's in your face at the moment because it's hard and you've got to deal with it. But we like to help our clients look around the corner and not only the end game of hopefully getting what they want or protecting the reputation or getting things back to where they were, but also what are the potential speed bumps along the way, and also what are the potential positive opportunities along the way. And that's really an important thing to remember when you're looking at this situation at the federal level, that sometimes it does take more than one try. I can remember we went for years and years and years on this one very small, really detailed taxation issue, and I probably couldn't explain it anymore, but I used to be really good at it. That was just so out there, but just finding a way to get it into a bill and finding enough members of Congress that could understand it and could say, yeah, this isn't a bad thing, and it's not going to cost very much money, and just change the taxation. But to keep your eyes on the prize. And I think that's the hardest thing to do right now, is to keep your eyes on the prize and to remain focused and to keep the energy going, to advocate for the things that are important to you and your organization. And I think we talked about partnering with other organizations and allies. It's also, I think, really helpful at a time like this to have kind of a neutral party to help you clear away the chaos and really look at where you are and where you need to go and what you need to do and say from a really strategic perspective.